Jeff Thomas, host of In Your Prime, takes us on a tour of Mount Tabor, an urban volcano located in the heart of Portland, Oregon.
Mount Tabor is kind of interesting because there are very few places that actually have a volcano within the city limits. Obviously, the Hawaiian volcanoes come to mind, and so they are basically cities built on volcanoes. But this is interesting because it's a really nicely exposed volcano in a park setting where people can enjoy it, and it is very easy to understand because it's all laid out in front of you. The original mapping in this area was done in 1945. So the first geologic map, which does include this particular volcano, included the Portland area, or concentrated basically on just the Portland area. And so we've known that this volcano has been here for a while. It was probably excavated by some of the first pioneers here. They would have used it for road material or for icy streets in the wintertime, gravel, that sort of thing. This lava field is called the Boring Lava Field. It's named after a town of Boring, which is over southeast of Portland. And the earliest eruptions probably happened about 3 million years ago. At least that's what we've been able to figure out so far. And the most recent eruption, they think, is some eruptions across the river, because it includes all of the Portland area as well as some area across the Columbia River into Vancouver up toward Mount St. Helens. And so we think that probably the youngest volcano is somewhere between 50,000 and 20,000 years old. And it's been going, there's been a volcano erupting in this area approximately every 100,000 years for the last million years that we know about, and possibly back as far as 3 million years. Mount Tabor is actually this entire hill. This volcano itself doesn't really have a name. It's just a little cinder cone. And by little, I mean that it probably covered a half an acre to maybe an acre when it was intact. And all that's remaining is sort of this side of it. Mount St. Helens you might think of as a much larger version of this Boring Lava Field volcano. In other words, it is a volcano that's gone off over a very long period of time, as it has just recently been doing some dome building in its crater. But they're very different in a lot of ways, not just the fact that this is a much smaller eruption and isn't going to go off again in the future. The main difference between Mount St. Helens and this is actually the chemistry of the lava or the magma. This chemistry is much more like the Hawaiian volcanoes. On the other hand, when we look at a similar rock specimen on Mount St. Helens, we discover that it's much richer in potassium and sodium and has a lot more silica in it. One of the really nice things about having this being previously excavated for a gravel pit is it exposes the history of the volcano for us. In other words, we can look at these layers and see what was happening in each eruption. And in fact, this layer right here records a single eruptive phase. It may have gone on for a day, it might have gone on for 2 hours, we don't know. And it shows us that it started out pretty quiet, made lots of little cinders, was basically not throwing out big chunks of lava. But as it got going and the throat of the volcano sort of got cleared, then it was throwing out much larger pieces of magma. And then at some point, that particular phase of the volcano, it ran out of gas essentially. And so it quit erupting. And you could see that in this line that has kind of a white look to it. When we look at the volcano here, sort of in total, you can see that it started out fairly quietly because there aren't very many big chunks down here. But as we look at the layers a little bit higher in the volcanic phase, and of course the oldest eruptions are at the bottom and the youngest eruptions are at the top, we can see that it got really going for a while, and so it was making a really nice volcanic eruption for a little while, and then it quieted down again, which is the orange layers that you could see up at the top. Anything that's gone off within the last 50,000 years for a geologist is incredibly young. And so you can't rule out the possibility that there will be future boring lava field eruptions. But as my colleague said, you'd be more likely to win the lottery than for a volcano to go off in this area during your lifetime, essentially. Mount Tabor itself, which is a much larger hill than just this little volcano, is a city park for the city of Portland. And you can actually reach Mount Tabor by taking a bus to get here. And this particular little area, or the cinder cone that's right here, they've done a beautiful job of turning it into a usable area. There's a little amphitheater right here, there's basketball courts. They took what was essentially a kind of ugly gravel pit and turned it into a wonderful space.
Mount Tabor is an awesome site. To learn more about this extinct volcano, you can visit them on the web at portlandsbest.com.